Kathy.
Robin, can you hear us?
I can.
You can. We're live.
All right, let's
We're
go.
live. Then let's begin. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 23rd Board of Selectmen meeting. We are back in the Great Hall in the center
Some of
the-
us.
I'm in the Great Hall.
for the first time in 18 months. So welcome, everyone. We're doing the meeting a little bit differently this evening. We're live. Bob Springett, member of the Board of Selectmen, is here. Robin Hunter is remote. So we're going to start somewhat like we have done in the past 18 months, where we're going to remind everyone that the meeting is being conducted both live here and remote. And Robin Hunter, member of the Board of Selectmen. Robin, would you please indicate by saying present or here that you are part of the meeting?
Present.
Thank you very much. And we're being recorded on Facebook. So I'll remind everyone to please be sure not to share your screen. For those that are participating at home, I did hear Dave Haviland. I know there are others. Kathy is remote. Here in the room with us this evening is Chris Dwelly, Kate O'Brien, Dave Sullivan. We have a couple of other speakers that'll be with us. Jerry Lane is here, Felicia Hoffman's here, Carl Valente is here. So we are, as I said, conducting the meeting both live here and remote. So welcome again. Kate, this is the portion of the meeting for Citizen Speak. Has anyone written, called online for a citizen's comment? Terrific, thank you.
John?
There's a hand raised, and on the board,
No, it's citizens' comments. It's over. Right?
I can't see.
That's Jerry.
I can see.
I just have a short announcement, if you'd let me share my screen for 1 second, or 10 seconds.
We are in citizens' comment. Jerry,
Yes,
is this a citizens' comment?
this is a citizen's comment.
Please go right ahead.
I'd just like to show something, that's all.
I'm sorry?
I guess I can't share my screen just to demonstrate something, that's fine. I just wanted to make everyone aware who is watching this or will be watching this, that October 5th, there will be a influenza vaccination clinic at the highway garage, just like last year. Drive-through, pretty much contactless, will start this year at 11 a.m. and we hope to have easily as many as we did last year, well over 400, and we welcome anybody and everybody 12 years and up. So again, October 5th, starting at 11 o'clock in the morning, and there will be registration information published by Monday.
Thank you, Jerry. Anything else to add, or is that it?
No, other than I strongly urge everybody to in fact, be vaccinated against the influenza, because last year with everyone essentially keeping at home, we're not sure how serious a spread there will be this year. The predictions are that it could be very considerable. And obviously, the last thing you want to do in this environment is take on yet another illness.
Thank you very much. Jerry, I'd just like to remind everyone that was Jerry Clark, who is the chairman of the Board of Health in Dover, Massachusetts. Thank you, sir. We're going to move on to our first item, the Community Center Building Project and discussion of borrowing. And our presenter is Carl Valente. Carl, how are you this evening?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Spriggett, nice to be back again, Ms. Hunter.
You're joined by Jerry Lane.
I'm joined by, yes, our treasure collector, Jerry Lane. And we wanted to have an initial discussion with the board about the borrowing that we'll be doing for the community center project, Carroll Community Center project, which I know Mr. Spriggett and others have been working on for 2 or 3 years now. So it's now, time. I know you have be going out to bid soon for the project, and so we wanted to have an initial discussion with the board about the timing of doing that borrowing. We're not looking for any decision tonight. We wanted to just open up the sort of the issues. The reason that we are coming before you is we're in an environment where we expect interest rates to increase over the next probably 3 to 9 months. So we may have an opportunity to borrow at more favorable rates if we can borrow earlier than if we would push this off to a later time. Under a sort of a traditional environment, we would probably be doing the long-term borrowing, probably 12 or 15 months from now at the end of the project, and we would only do short-term borrowing, a ban now. That's sort of the traditional way of doing it, but given that we're likely in an increasing interest rate environment, again, it may make sense to save on borrowing costs to do the bond, the long-term borrowing, not necessarily 100% of it, but some substantial percent of it, doing it earlier on. So there's really 3 issues that you'll need to think about as we get ready for this borrowing. The first is when to issue the debt. So the earliest we could do it, we could be ready to issue the debt would be December. It takes us 6 to 8 weeks is the process. So that would be the absolute earliest we could issue debt, whether it be short-term or long-term. The latest we'd have to issue some debt would be by June 30, because we're spending money this fiscal year. So again, whether it's a bond or a ban, we'd have to issue something to cover what we're spending now, no later than June 30. So that's sort of the parameters on the timing. The second issue is how much debt to issue. Again, if we go short-term, a ban, we would look at the cash flow of the project and base the borrowing on the cash flow, which we have from your project manager. We do have a cash flow for the project. So that's sort of one guidepost. If we issue the bond, the long-term debt, if the board wants to do that up front, what Jerry and I have discussed is probably recommending that we issue, maybe between 65 and 75% of the total authorization of the $18,850,000 up front. And again, to take advantage of the lower interest rates that are occurring right now. So that's sort of the parameters on how much to issue. The last issue is, do we issue bans or bonds? That's partially dependent on the timing that you decide on. The amount of work the town has to go through for either a ban or a bond is about the same. So it doesn't affect the work we do. The issuance cost, so what we have to pay to issue, is about the same. Bans are a little bit less, but the cost for our financial advisor, the cost for our bond counsel, the cost for the Moody's credit rating, that's all about the same, regardless of whether we issue a ban or a bond. So that's sort of the background and sort of what we're starting to talk about here. What we'd like to suggest is come back before you again in October. Our understanding is you're going to have a revised cost estimate then. And assuming that revised cost estimate is still well within the budget that town meeting approved, then we just need to, look at these 3 issues and with some more specificity decide on, ban versus bond, how soon to issue, and how much to issue.
Thank you very much, Carl. Our assistant town administrator, Dave Havlin, is on the call, in the meeting as well, and I'm
Moderator.
sure. Robin, what?
He's the moderator, assistant town moderator.
I said administrator. Typically, Robin would be elbowing me at this point in time, being
Not if
remote.
you're social distance.
Yeah, so
John, is that a promotion or a demotion?
it's a promotion, Dave. Absolutely a promotion. Sorry, Kate. Kate, I meant to say moderator, not administrator. And Dave, I know that as you're listening intently, you're saying, John, you should explain that BAN is a bond anticipation note. And so for those that are just wondering about the terminology, the BAN is a bond anticipation note, and we will obviously, in anticipation of the borrowing, the BAN is what you would use prior to. So
To cover short-term.
to cover short-term obligations
Expenses.
and expenses. So Dave, I'm sure you were thinking of that, but Jerry, is there anything that you would like to add in addition to what Carl has brought to us?
No, it's just that interest rates are significantly lower than where they were in, 3 years ago to, sort of the regular run of things. They are moving up, and if you've watched the news, the Fed is talking that they will be backing off on their support for things as they see the economy improved, which will tend to have interest rates moving up, which is why both our FA and internally, we're thinking that some borrowing early would end up in net savings.
Agreed. Robin, would you like to add anything? Comment?
No, I think what Carl and Jerry have both said is definitely what I'm seeing as well. Makes sense to me.
Thank you. Bob?
No, I think it's, whether it's common knowledge or not, everybody's been anticipating an increase in interest rates for a while. A lot of money floating around in the economy right now, and the Fed, as you said, Jerry, clearly going to change course in 2022. So I guess when is soon, to answer your question, when.
Yeah, Jerome Powell's been asked that question probably 100 times in the past month or two, when the Fed will begin tapering. So
I had a question about, part of it is sort of a cost-benefit side to it. We're trading, by borrowing a certain amount of money now, let's assume you suggested 65 or 75% of the authorized amount that the town voted back in June. And if we augmented that later, you said the costs. So what are the costs for bonding or banding?
Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. So the two main costs for issuing a bond is the financial advisor fee and bond counsel's opinion fee. That is in the $40,000 to $45,000 range for each. Then the Moody's opinion is about $25,000, and then there's a bunch of smaller. So it's about, for an $18.8 million bond, it is about $120,000.
And Carl had said earlier that the fee is about the same for whether you band or whether you bond.
It'll be a little less for the band, but remember, the band will then have to be converted to a bond. So it kind of washes out.
Okay, so
And
this is
we would also pay a little bit more to split the sale in two and do an early piece and a later piece. But we should more than make up any additional cost on interest savings.
All right, so let me ask so this is a John question because he's really a math whiz. What's a 1/4% change in interest rates on 18.9 million? What would that cost us in interest?
per month? Off the top of my head.
Yeah, you could give it to me hourly if you want.
Well, it's $56,000 a year, so it's going to be, Dave Haviland's doing it on his calculator as I'm talking. It's going to be $6,000 ballpark.
A year per month?
Month,
So that's 72,000 roughly.
yeah.
And
Dave,
and the cost is
Dave finished level 3 CFA a lot faster than I did, so.
So the off, so at 1%, what did I say, 1%? A quarter percent.
0.25%.
So a 1/4% raise in the rates will basically offset the costs.
Yep.
Right? Is that right?
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And by the way, the rates will change, 1/4%. And we, going out to 18 million, remember, was a 40% increase in the original cost. So
because of the
we'll
market disruption.
Because of market disruptions and raw materials costs and increase in costs and everything, which will probably come down.
That's the hope.
The hope. I shouldn't say that. The hope is it comes down.
I mean, right now, there's still reports of lots of disruption in the market globally on various and different things.
But that question, that uncertainty in final price is why we are only recommending, 65 to 75%, as opposed to saying, let's borrow the whole $18 million and deal with the problem of if we have, money left over when we're done 2 years down the road, because that's another set of issues that we don't have to go to.
Got it. I agree. I think that, well, we can cover that in October, but anything else, Carl?
Nope, this is, again, mostly a preview discussion for the board.
Thank you.
But again, in October, we will need some answers to those 3 questions.
So Robin, do you want to speak up and tell us what you think, please?
I said I agree. I think it makes sense to borrow some at this point, or in October. I think, hopefully, Bob, by the October meeting, we will have some indication of what the price might be.
My understanding, Robin, is that the project team of the building committee is going to, or the project is going to look at costs the last week of September, and that I think they're supposed to be presented at the October 3rd building committee. I've texted Ford to see if that was correct, so take that with a grain of salt. But that's my understanding about when that information should be available. I was thinking about this coming to the meeting, and the original estimate of the project was $13 million. We got slammed with the cost increase due to market disruption, brought it up to $18 million. Ford's reasonably comfortable that that the project would be on target. Actually, it's 18.9 million. And I was fooling around and I said, well, 15 million is probably not a bad number to go with. And it turns out that I was thinking 20 million, and 3/4 of 20 million is roughly 15 million. So I would be comfortable with that kind of a range.
No, I think that makes sense. And, and we can see what happens with actual prices. But it makes sense to lock in the lower interest rates now for part of it, or a majority of it.
Okay.
I guess that reminds me just of one other issue. When you went to town meeting and we had prepared some modeling about the cost of this over 20 years and how it would impact the average residential taxpayer and people with homes of different values, for that modeling, we used a very conservative interest rate of 3.5%. I think right now, if we were to sell today, I think rates would be around 2.25%. So it's unlikely that we'll even be as high as what we were modeling. We'll probably still come in. When the Fed raises money, raises rates, they tend to go in 0.25% increments. So I would suspect we're still going to come in below what we had modeled for you at town meeting. So the annual cost should still end up less than we had.
That would be good news for the residents.
Would be.
It would be. It would be. So, Carl, thank you very much. Jerry, thank you.
Yep. Do you have more?
Nope, that's it for us.
I was remiss at the beginning of this presentation, Carl. Thank you. I should have reminded people that Carl Valenti is our acting finance director. Carl Valenti was our interim town administrator, served as town administrator for Lexington prior to retirement.
Yes.
Prior to that, Weston. And prior to that, Bob, do you remember?
I do not.
Oh, God, come on. Lexington, Weston, and prior to
I
that,
was your neighbor in Needham.
Needham.
Yep.
That's where I got to know a lot of the players in Dover when I was there, including Ford.
Good board.
So once you finish up this stint as interim finance director, what are you going for next? You going to go for interim board of selectmen member? Or what's the deal?
He's going to move to Dover,
Yeah, he's going to move to.
become a board of selectmen, show us all how you do it right.
I heard that. Carl, thank you very much. Jerry, thank you.
Thanks.
Going to move to our next item, the financial progress and the goals updates. And you don't even have to get up from the seat, Carl.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. So again, I'm here tonight with our treasurer collector, Jerry Lane, and remotely, town accountant Kathy LaPlante and our town assessor, Amy Gao, are also here this evening. And we want to provide the board with an update on a number of best practice projects that we are in the process of implementing in our finance offices, and to discuss with the board the fiscal 20 audited financial statements and the management letter, should you have any questions about those documents. Almost 3 years ago, when I was here as your acting town administrator, the Selectmen established as one of its goals that town departments modernize and streamline operations, largely through the use of proven technology, where Dover was sorely behind the times. Unfortunately, instead of being here tonight to be able to demonstrate to you the steady progress in this regard, we had 2 very challenging years in our accounting and treasurer's offices. I own this. Jerry and Kathy own this. I will not include the assessor's office in this because I think they are functioning very well. That being said, we thought it was important to share with you our progress to date in turning this around and our plan for the next 2 years. Let me first start by answering a reasonable question you may have. What happened? This answer is not meant to be an excuse, but more a reflection of some of the challenges in managing a small community. So first, we had a new town accountant, Kathy LaPlante, who was hired following the retirement of the town's longtime town accountant. And like any key financial position, it takes time for someone new to come up to speed on the town's financial operations. Normally, this is a relatively short process. Most of the learning curve takes place in 6 to 10 months. But we didn't make it easy for Kathy, which is the second issue. So as Kathy was here, she came in the middle of the fiscal year. She's during her first 6 months on the job, and not only closing that fiscal year, but opening a new fiscal year, we were implementing a new accounting package, or what is known as our general ledger. Implementing a new general ledger is one of the most challenging tasks for a finance office, because a town that is doing this has to maintain their old general ledger and all those records, at the same time as creating and opening the new general ledger and training staff on using that, including training on that software. I've had other accountants say to me when I've gone through this, I'll do this once in my career. Don't ever ask me to do it again. It's that challenging. Third, we had a variety of long-term illnesses during this time period. And in a small community such as ours, where we don't have much staff depth or bench strength, we did not have the staff resources just to manage the basic day-to-day financial operations. So we were quite literally in crisis mode, and we had to hire a consultant for our treasurer's office and another consultant for the accounting office to get us through fiscal 20 and 21. And I can't say enough good things about the consultants who assisted us. But just like when you hire new staff, it does take the time for those consultants to come up to speed as well. And then lastly, during this period, we were operating for most of the period remotely due to COVID, which further added a level of complexity to managing our financial operations. While all this was happening, the town administrator, rightly so, asked us to come up with a plan or a series of changes and improvements we could make so we could not only limit the likelihood of this situation in the future, but also respond to the Selectmen's goals of modernizing and streamlining our financial operations. So when Chris asked for that plan, I want to talk a little bit about how we came up with the plan, how we identify what we were going to work towards, and then some of the progress we've made to date. So to develop the plan of action, we first needed to evaluate our own operations, and we did this in 3 ways. With the board's support, we invited the Department of Revenue, the Division of Local Services, to come in and undertake a financial management review of the town's operations. And I know you're familiar with that report and the excellent recommendations that were made as part of that report. Second, we reviewed the management letter from the town's independent auditors for the prior 3 years so that we could also understand and address those findings and recommendations. And finally, based on the experiences I've been fortunate enough to have in 3 other communities, I prepared for the town administrator an evaluation in a series of both short-term and longer-term recommendations, some of which would require additional financial resources, which to date the board, the Warren Committee, and town meeting have generously supported. And I should add that each of these evaluation efforts were not necessarily duplicative, but they were complementary in that each looked at our financial operations through a different lens. So we did this evaluation, and based on the findings, we came up with the following plan. First, we needed to substantially realign staff tasks in the town accountant's office and the treasurer's office to use proven technology to accomplish the work that we were quite frankly manually processing. Second, we needed to decentralize tasks in the town accountants and the treasurer's offices to give the individual town departments control over the processing of their payroll and accounts payable and provide them with online access to that data. Third, with the staff time that this will free up in both of those offices, the town accountant and the treasurer's office, we are redirecting the staff to address the recommendations made by the town's auditors in their management letter to the Board of Selectmen and the Department of Revenue in their recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. And lastly, we're using this technology to what I call opening the funnel. So in the past, most of the financial information that town departments needed relating to their finances had to be obtained by directly going to the town accountant's office or the treasurer's office. And given those offices both had limited staff, that created a narrow funnel. So now using the technology in both our payroll and general ledger software applications, departments are able to get this information directly by going into our systems, freeing up our staff time and giving those departments immediate access and control in accessing this information. So while we're smack in the middle of implementing these new systems, we can report to you that we have made some progress to date. All departments now have online access to their budget, their spending reports, and their revenue accounts. About half of our departments have been trained by the town accountant to directly enter their bills into their general ledger system, giving them greater control over these payments and freeing up staff time in the accounting office. And we expect the remainder of the departments to be trained within the next 2 months. Beginning this past July 1st, in the Treasurer's Office, we implemented a lockbox payment system for real estate and motor vehicle excise bills, substantially improving the time it takes us to process these payments, and again, freeing up time in the Treasurer's Office. We have also modified and streamlined the process by which the Treasurer processes all payments made into the town, which will allow us to close the fiscal year on a more timely basis. We are well into the first of 4 phases of changing the way we process employee payroll, which will provide all of our employees with online access to their pay information, their vacation accruals, their sick leave banks, their personal leave balances, something that up till now we've been having to maintain manually. And we are closing the backlog on recording all payments made to the town, which will allow us to meet our legal and audit requirements to reconcile our cash on a timely basis. So what does all this mean for you as policymakers and for our department heads? We should be able to close fiscal 21, so the year we just ended, much earlier than we've closed the prior 2 fiscal years. And I should know within about the next month how soon we'll be able to close fiscal 21. But that, we can tell already that last year we closed fiscal 21 in late May of the following year. Right now, we have every expectation that we'll close by the end of this calendar year and probably before the end of calendar 21. That will eventually provide for a timelier certification of the town's free cash, which is an important part of the operating budget, and I know the discussions that you have with the Warren Committee, and is also part of setting the tax rate every year. We'll be able to provide the Selectmen and the Warren Committee with more timely information on unexpended balances from the prior year, and we hope to have that information to the town administrator next week. We'll provide the Selectmen, the Warren Committee, and department heads with immediate access to the status of their budgets, including the status of any special warrant articles or capital articles, which in the past, again, they didn't have access to. They had to come to us and come through that narrow funnel. During the course of the fiscal year, these changes will provide the Selectmen with more timely information of revenue collections and actual expenditures compared to budgeted amounts. You'll be able to look at it in real time. We can provide you, if you don't want to go online, with monthly reports on both revenues and budget status. And hopefully, all of this will improve the confidence our taxpayers and town officials have in the management of the town's finances. And lastly, and sort of important to myself and Jerry and Kathy, this will free up badly needed staff time to address the many pressing issues raised by our auditors. The details of all this are found in the best practices document that I know you have, so we can answer any specific questions you may have about our plan going forward. And the document is broken out into the progress we've made to date and what is on our to-do list, basically what we're working on right now. I want to, though, importantly add that each of these projects that we're working on, it's not like turning on a light switch with the change being instant. It's more like rewiring your house, where you have to take a detailed and methodical approach so you don't set the house on fire while you're doing the work. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions the board may have on our best practices work plan, the audited financial statements, or the auditor's management letter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carl. Jerry, would you like to add anything before we begin the question part of it or the comment part of it?
I'm not happy at the way things went, and we're working very hard to get things back on track, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Terrific, thank you. So I will, just a couple of quick comments from me. I'll have Robin go first, and then Bob, then just maybe one or two questions from me at the very end. But thank you for the report. It's a very succinct and detailed summary of the report, the Melanson report, and the best practices report. So I've read both. I've looked through every item, and in my summary, I just want to begin with a couple of quick comments for the folks here, for the people listening at home, for the people who watch this on a recording. Audit reports, for those I've been on a board for many, many years. I've been on, as you know, public boards and private boards. And for those who have not been on a public board or a private board of a corporation, an audit is a very different process. And the context of an audit is very important, because if you read this without any context, you see words that jump off the page at you that could mean a lot of different things. And specifically, when you look at the words that are bolden, as you've both referred to, where there's weaknesses, or there's material weaknesses, or there are deficiencies, or material deficiencies, there, in my mind, and in our board view, for me, there's nothing new here for me. For me, this is a work in progress. For the three of us, this has been a process of change that's taken place over 3 years, and will take place over maybe 4 years or 5 years. So the context for this report, I think, for those at home and those without a lot of expertise in audit reports, is important. Because if you read it without context, you'd think, my God, there's a lot of things that have really gone wrong. In my opinion, that's not the case. In my opinion, that this report highlights things that we have continuously worked towards. And we're not there, clearly. We have some things to do. So I'm not surprised, and quite frankly, I'm not put off by any of this. So I think everything that the report shows and highlights are things that we understand. You've articulated that tonight, Carl, and that we're working towards. So that's my context. I like the idea of opening the funnel. I think that's something people can relate to. I remind everybody that improvements lead to timing, speed, and reconciliation are all part of a process that take time to get things faster without doing things incorrectly. The last thing I would just say is that the results and the information provided is a process of continuous improvement. And I think that we'll all benefit from that. So those are my comments. Robin, would you like to jump in?
Sure. So, many of these items on the management report have been there for a couple of years, or as long as I can remember. I think what I really like about the report that Carl and the finance team has presented is their actions to finally be able to address these concerns. And that, I believe, reinforces everything we've been trying to do to improve processes and then to continuously improve the way we do things. So I know this is a slow process. I'm sure some of the changes you all have made have been a little tricky to implement. Like, I notice now that all departments are entering their own payables, and I'm sure with that you may not be entering them, but there's a review process that you have to put in place and a training process. So, I think it's a step in the right direction, but you do have to put other checks and balances in place. So I really commend the team. I would be thrilled to see us close the books before the end of the year. And it sounds like, you're on track to do that. So each year we can make more and more progress, and with the goal of having a management letter with nothing in it. So I appreciate all the efforts of everyone.
Thank you, Robin. Bob?
Yeah, in my experience in business, I was often the guy who was asked to put on the boots and the hat and go into the place that was on fire, and help put out that fire. I was always surprised. I don't know why. I mean, after the second or third time, I should have known. We get into trouble. Most places get into trouble because they've tried to do too much with too few. And I'm getting a sense from what you guys have said is that we were trying to do too much with too few people. And that is the recipe for disaster. Good people working hard, just overwhelmed. The second thing that sort of struck me about this is sort of the centralized nature of the processes. And it strikes me that it may have been an attempt at quality control. Is that true? If you have this information filtering through one or two people, the chances of having higher quality control or the appearance of having better management control is there, as opposed to, so that's two. Three, that leads to a question around distributed systems. I've done distributed systems. And the key to distributed systems is making sure that the data input has a lot of controls around it, because you know the old story, stuff in, stuff out. And when you distribute, Robin's point about making sure that you have strong, well-trained staff or well-trained job aids or well-designed input screens that minimize or highlight information that may or may not be correct. So distributed systems require high training, require job aids, require high management in order to make it work well. And you got to have the staffing. You have to have the staff numbers right. And I guess the last question is sort of we've had reviews by the DOR, we've had reviews by whoever does this management letter. You guys have taken a deep dive. To me, this seems to be a fundamental question of process engineering. And I don't know if we've had people come in to look at the DOR, we've had people come in to look at various and sundry other things. I mean, this is at the base, it was a heavily manual process, relying on people doing things in the funnel. Has anybody stepped back or thought about doing a process re-engineering study to make sure that as we go through this effort, and it's a big effort, I understand that we optimize the work and intelligence and knowledge of our people to truly make an effective and efficient financial set of processes. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that's in there or not, but you have that whole package has to come together in order to make sure you meet the modernization goals.
I think all four of your points are right on target. I'll just briefly comment, sort of going in reverse order. So in terms of, has anybody looked at our systems operations? So I mentioned earlier about we've hired two, what I feel, excellent consultants who work in a number of communities, both the size of Dover, larger, small, and smaller. So that is one of their tasks, as well as to do that, look at those procedures and operations. So you're absolutely right. We have to look at that. We felt it was better to have somebody who's done this in a lot of communities and seen what works and didn't work, than to try to do it ourselves. So I think you'll be pleased once those two consultants, as they continue their training portion of their work. Again, working backwards, both your comment and Ms. Hunter's about internal controls. So we expect actually our internal controls will improve. You're absolutely right in that they'll improve, because up to now, the staff who are supposed to be doing the internal control work have been doing data entry work. They've just been getting all these hundreds and hundreds of, whether it's invoices or payrolls, into the system, and haven't had the time to do the internal control review. So when, one of the first comments I made is we're completely changing the way staff assignments are, what the staff is doing. And that's the switch. They're taking away sort of that rudimentary, again, nothing more than data entry, and putting their role to what it really should be, which is a internal control review. So I actually expect that will not only be strong, but it'll probably be stronger than we've had. Third, I think largely the reason we haven't been able to move in this direction earlier is because the systems we have, our own general ledger system, didn't provide for distributed input. So it had to come in through the funnel. And this, happened before I was here as your acting. Jerry was largely involved in this, selecting this new general ledger package. We received a state grant, that underwrote most of the costs. But that GL package now has given us the technology, something I remember you saying over and over and over, using technology, to be able to move to a distributive system, to move to a system that people can have access to 24/7. I mean, this resides in the cloud. You can be at home because of COVID and do your financial work, or be here in town offices. But that was a very challenging implementation, as any GL package is when you implement it. And as I mentioned, that happened during Kathy LaPlante, our town accountant's, her first 6 months. She had to bring on this new package, GL package, as well as maintain the old one, while we made the transition. So, the words you've said so many times, this board, is about, are we using technology in the ways we could? Now we have that technology to use. And this isn't cutting edge. I remember what Ms. Hunter said when we came to you about the lockbox. She says, companies have been doing this for 20 years, and
60.
We were moving, and, part of it is it's become much more affordable for smaller communities like ours to do it. But all of the technology improvements that are part of what I've discussed, this is all proven technology that's been out there for a number of years and are being used by municipalities in a widespread way. So, when you're a small community like us, you can't be the ones to invent the wheel. I don't want to be first in line, but I'm happy to be, third and fourth in line after the bigger parties vet these things and you see what their experiences are.
So I have one question. Do you mind, John? So this is simply because I don't know, right? So I have seen an awful lot of companies sending bills to me electronically, right? So I've always been curious about the best way to start is if you can capture the information electronically. So have you, in the vendors that we use, is the information that comes into us, payables, invoices, et cetera, is it electronic or is it still paper? And because I've seen a big shift to electronic. You're right, it's clearly shifting to electronic. I couldn't tell you the percentage that we now get electronically, but it's clearly shifting that way. With our GL package, one of the
functions it has. We haven't purchased it yet, and it's not terribly expensive. But one of the functions it has is when we get those bills, we can then keep them electronically in the system. So the attic, which includes boxes and boxes of this type of stuff, should largely start shrinking if we implement electronic record keeping for our financial records. The town administrator and I, as recently as today, were having that discussion about, do we want to purchase this additional piece of software, and if so, when do we want to implement it? But that, as you're saying, that's sort of clearly the direction that the private sector has been going in.
Because that's what we tried to do. We tried to capture it once and then flow it through the system so that the amount of hands that touch it, you just increase the error rate. You don't lower the error rate. And I didn't know if there's, so we used to talk with high volume users. We had a way of taking the information from their systems to our systems directly. So we cut out all that paperwork. I don't know if, because we're small, I don't know. We probably don't have that scale. But I mean, even now, cell phones, you can do an awful lot of stuff with cell phones where it's, you get the bill and you pay it. It's all done, and then it has to get entered into the accounting system. So as you look forward, we should be aware of that kind of change, and if we can, model it or take advantage of that as you guys go through this exercise, or at least put it on a checkbox.
Yep.
I'm done. Thank you, John. Thank you, guys.
Robin, anything else would you like to add?
No, that was a good conversation. Good questions.
Carl, thank you. Jerry, thank you. And we're going to move on to your next item, our next item, 1.3.
Is it still Carl?
It's still
Keep
Carl.
him here all night?
Carl, we're going to keep, we're not going to keep him
It's
all
the
night.
Carl
because
Show.
The town is requesting the approval of the board to enter into 2 agreements with Clifton Larson Allen. The first is for accounting services for the fiscal year ending 2021. The second is for an as-needed professional accounting support service.
So I mentioned earlier we hired 2 excellent consultants who have been advising us and working with us on many of these improvements. One is the accounting firm Clifton Larson Allen. They did a fair amount of work for us for fiscal 20. I think we'll do less so in closing fiscal 21 because we've made so much progress. But we still want to be able to use them because of the new systems we're bringing on. We want to make sure we give the right amount of attention to all the new stuff we're bringing on. And so use Clifton Larson to help us close the fiscal year. So we'd like to continue using them for another year. And then in addition, as you mentioned earlier about sort of the training and portion of it, the second agreement that we asked them to drop is to give us just a price for doing some staff training. As we make all these changes and improvements, we know there's some staff training that will go along with that. And the woman we're working with, who I've worked with on a number of occasions in my other communities, is just excellent. So it's both the financial work helping us close 21 is one agreement. The other one is a training agreement to provide us with training services.
Thank you. Jerry, anything to add?
No.
Thank you, Carl. So this is the point where oftentimes this happens, where I have to say thank you for this, and I have to disclose that unbeknownst to you, unbeknownst to Jerry, unbeknownst to Bob, Robin, Clifton Larson Allen is one of my accounting firms. So I think, and I'll certainly get clarification on this, but I can tell you they're a great firm. We've used them. They file a tax return for one of my family trusts. They file tax returns for me. They've done a lot of accounting work for me. So I think I have to disclose that and then possibly recuse myself from voting on
You
it.
have to do? There's a document you have to?
I'm sorry?
Fill out as a document? You have?
Yeah, there's a document that I would have to disclose and make publicly aware that they are people I'm very well familiar with because I've hired them and have a working relationship
Maybe
with them.
we should reconsider, I don't know.
Robin, would you like to add anything?
No, it's kind of nice that you have hands-on experience with them.
Bob?
I don't, I just have a question for Chris. So Chris, as we go through this, to complete this exercise, I mean, clearly we've been understaffed. So once things are running according to Hoyle, is there going to be future staffing implications in this financial department?
Bob, it's hard to hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just asked, there's been I don't know if I should be looking this way, Robin, or should I be looking that way?
When you look the other way, I can hear you better, so speak into the microphone.
Oh, well, it's right here, maybe I have it off.
No,
What I said was, part of the problem has been having the right number of people, trained people doing this work. And so I asked Chris that once we get through this exercise, does he foresee a staffing implication for this department in the future or not?
At this point, I don't foresee any staffing implications that we should be concerned about. As Carl and the team have elaborated this evening, there has been a lot going on, and the team has really been in crisis mode just to get up to speed, so to speak. So I hope and the plan is that as we get up to speed,
As you crest, we're
as
okay.
we leverage our new technology and we reassign and rearrange how we're operating, that the staff that we have in place will be able to sustain the financial organization moving forward. I will say, though, I will use this opportunity to make a plug that it has been invaluable having an acting finance director to help steer and guide this work and work with our finance team in order to move us forward and implement these things. It's more than a full-time job for everybody, so that's been a really helpful role in which Carl has been serving over the past year and a half. So
That sounds like a potential future staff increase.
that might be a teaser.
So I believe that I can make the motion, and I move to authorize Mr. Dwelly to execute all documents related to the agreements with Clifton Larson Allen for professional accounting support services. I also, again, have to disclose that it's a firm I am very well familiar with because I've used them significantly in the past, not for my personal tax returns, but for my family trust tax returns, my kids' returns, and I have not used them in this capacity. So I think that for the purpose of this meeting, I'm going to recuse myself from this vote, but make the motion and ask for a second. Robin?
I will second the motion.
All in favor?
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springer.
So moved. I think, Carl, that is probably probably crossing the Ts and dotting the Is, but thank you for that.
Good.
Jerry, thank you. Amy, Kathy, watching at home, participating on Zoom, thank you very much.
I think we should keep Carl to do the 1.4.
I'll watch on
You
cable.
watch on YouTube or Facebook. Yeah, very, very nice.
Carl will be getting some work as a result.
I think he might get some. He might want to stick around. Good night. Thank you. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you. Good night. Item 1.4 is our reserve policy a discussion of our reserve policy and a potential vote with Mr. Dwelly.
Thanks, John. So two of the goals that the Board of Selectmen have identified for this fiscal year are around the establishment of reserve policies. One being the codification or memorialization of the capital reserve fund that was established at this past town meeting, so we want to memorialize that policy. And then the second policy is the development of a free cash policy and how the town wants to generally strive to generate free cash as well as then utilize that free cash. I certainly don't have to belabor the point that free cash has been discussed quite often over the years. So I wanted to start the process of putting together two separate working groups to start to develop those policies with the hope of getting those achieved and accomplished this year. So I envision this as more of a general conversation as to who the board, if anyone, might be interested in assigning a board liaison to work on these two. I envision the structure on the capital side being a Board of Selectmen liaison, a Board of Selectmen member, the chair of the capital budget committee, a member of the warrant committee, and then we'll assign some staff resources to assist with the development and all the work related to that. And then the same would be for the free cash, though that would exclude the capital budget member. It would be a few people of the warrant committee, a Board of Selectmen member, and then would assign some staff to support that. And those two working groups would work independently to develop these policies and then move forward to present those to the warrant committee and the Board of Selectmen ultimately for approval.
Okay.
Yeah, great. My immediate response to that, Chris, is it's something that we, the three of us, have established as goals, objectives, priorities for every year that we've all been selectmen. So everybody watching at home and participating here tonight knows that the free cash and free cash management, the free cash guidance that we have been giving, that we took on as an initiative several years ago, free cash groups, study groups that we began some 5 years ago.
2018.
Yeah, 2018.
2018.
Have really benefited, we as the town have benefited from a deeper dive into these. I think the cash management policy of setting aside reserves is giving us a much better free cash understanding. So this is just, again, to use a phrase I think we've all used this evening, is a continuation of our goals, objectives, and a policy towards continuous improvement in all of these items. Robin, would you like to add anything?
I completely agree.
She's a woman of few words tonight.
I like that.
I don't know. Did you have dinner?
I did. I've had a very rough week.
Would you like to add anything, Mr. Springett?
So, I mean, I agree, John. I mean, we've made, just at the, was it May? Was it May this year when we did the cap stabilization, or was it a year prior to that?
It was this year.
It was this year. So, I mean, Robin had done work on cap stabilization. I remember the presentation I looked at the presentation before coming to the meeting tonight, and it seems to me to make sense. I don't want to give you work, Robin, but if it's capital budget with Barry and...
Right, I wanted to volunteer for that, especially since I'm, on the capital budget committee, and I feel as though we've started to do some good work, so
You'll take that on?
I will take that on.
Thank you, Robin.
Now, John, I'm going to say I made some fairly bold statements at the May 21 town meeting about moving from budgeting to financial management, and I made some claims around free cash and helping people understand. So I would feel remiss if I didn't raise my hand.
Thank you, Mr. Springett. I think those are both wonderful ideas. And I thank you very much, both of you, for the willingness to do that. And I think everyone knows, and anybody who's followed us, this particular board, for the past several years knows where we stand on the constitution of free cash and where we stand on the policy and the guidance of the money we bring in, the money we spend, and the money that we put in reserve and that we allocate for future expenses. Because as we have all said individually and collectively, cash is not free. It's money that has been spent. I don't necessarily spend. It's money that has invested and allocated for the benefit of everyone. And our job in the management and the fiduciary duty that we have is to do it in the most prudent, impactful way. So that always being our guiding principle is what we try to do. So it's a continuation of that.
So I think, John, in the municipal world, they call it encumbering. I think you encumber so that you can have the money there when you need to spend it.
We've said it many, many times, when this whole process, this pandemic took everyone off of their feet, we, the town of Dover, were in just a unique position of strength, because we had such a strong cash position and such a strong free cash position. It has served us extremely well in difficult times, and I think it's going to continue to do the same. So
Tough to get in trouble with a strong cash balance.
Absolutely.
So, Chris, how do you see this going forward? Are you going to organize the first several meetings or the first meeting?
That's right, yep. So I'll reach out to the two groups, and get everyone together, solicit some dates for us to have a first sit-down. In that meeting, I'll also provide everybody with a draft policy. So as you recall, part of our work 2 years ago was to engage with the state to develop a suite of best practice policies, some of which we've implemented internally, and then the other reserved ones we've just kind of had in the stable waiting for us to get the groups together to have these. So it'll be a good starting point for us to have a conversation about what might be the best fit for Dover.
So when we did when Robin did the presentation, I think it was, whether it was 2020 or 2021, I forget. We also talked about open space, stabilization account. Is that going to be part of this? Is that going to be just a follow-on?
It's all going to be a follow-on.
Yeah, so that's going to be separate. So Courtney Starling, the town's land use director and planner, is working on developing a suite of potential opportunities that the town can use to make investments in open space. So it'll be more of her work will be more of a menu or suite of things that the town could pursue, rather than just the establishment of one single policy, which she will present to the board this year.
So I'm talkative tonight. Last one, OPEB stabilization account. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, so we're refreshing that. We've got our data, the latest actuary from the schools. So we'll refresh the board's policy, which I think was 50 or 60% funded. That was the target goal that the board established back in 2018. So we're going to refresh all of that, and that'll be incorporated as part of the budget setting process for this year. And the finance team is working on all that right now.
Hey, Robin, that's it, right? Those were the four we talked about?
Yeah, Bob, we were in 2018, we had 4 warrant articles that we proposed, and they were open space, OPEB, stabilization, and free cash. So we had, at that particular 2018 town meeting, we took 2 of the items off of the warrant, and
Right.
we focused on
Yep.
OPEB,
Yep.
we focused on free cash. So
That's
capital stabilization came back as the work we did in 19 and 20 with Robin and I, and then, Rob and I, as we've all rotated off these and on to others. But essentially, for those who are still following along at home, those 4 have never changed. So the 4 being OPEB are, and again, these are all items that we, back in the beginning of, from 17 to 18, established as items that will always be a need for the town to address, and that we should, as part of our prudent long-term capital guidance and management, have a stabilization fund, because many towns have them, and we don't. Prior to us establishing them, we never did. Robin, anything you'd like to add to that? I pretty much a summary of where we were.
No, I mean, I just think I like that we continue to work on all of these, and we continue to refine them, and we continue to evaluate whether or not they make sense for the town and how we should tweak it for the best benefit of the town.
Agreed. Thank you. So there is no motion needed on that. We can move to item 1.5.
It said reserve policy discussion and potential vote.
There's no vote needed.
No, there's no
Okay.
vote needed.
It says so at the bottom of the screen.
Unless there's any contention between members as to who wants to serve on particular
There's
working
never,
groups.
ever, never.
I can renominate you. But he'll refuse, I think.
In town meeting, we've all, for the past 6 years, we have all taken our turns defending our free cash position. Item 1.5 is goal-setting software presentation. And our presenter for that this evening is our municipal project manager, Mr. Dave Sullivan.
Thank you
Dave,
very
how are
much.
you, sir?
Excellent, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you like being back in the Great Hall rather than being?
It's great, I love the hybrid meeting, it's working out well, so couldn't be happier with that.
A short
So
commute
Dave-
right up to his room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me share my
So
screen.
Dave, how
Yes, sir.
long did it take you to get the wrinkles out of this process, this system?
To get the wrinkles out of the system?
enjoying this evening.
Anything with AV, you're always going to have some wrinkles, so there's been some testing, and we've gone back and forth, but we didn't test earlier this week, and I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out, so.
You remember the first one that we did?
The first.
At least the first one that I know that we did.
Here?
Remember?
Yeah, we got very,
We got all
yeah, we
feedback.
decided to meet in the Great Hall, and I think the equipment had just arrived. I'm not sure it was even set up.
So you
We had a little feedback problem, I think.
tried to jump the
Right.
gun?
So then we tried cell phones, then we tried, it was just a mess.
Well, now we have it ironed out, so.
Yeah, it seems to be working quite well.
Yeah, it's definitely, yeah.
fake it.
Don't jinx me on my first go-through, so.
All right, let's go.
All right, so let me share my screen here. And we can talk about some goal-setting software. So, ironically, as part of my goals, one of the things Chris and I had discussed.
Recording in progress.
So one of the things Chris and I had discussed was goal-setting software. So we had looked at how do we get a software system that is easy to use, has great visualizations, can go across years as our projects do, and show it in a very easy-to-read visualization, and can be embedded into websites, and generally has a lot of flexibility as well as ease of use. So went through a couple of different software systems, did some research, researched about 5 different software systems: Asana, Jira, Monday, Basecamp, and Smartsheets. So with Asana and Jira, I have experience using that before in previous positions, and they're really cumbersome piece of software. Jira is really kind of pivoted more to the software development side, so it didn't really meet our needs here. Asana is quite cumbersome. It gets down to the minutia that I didn't think we needed here as well. And Basecamp and Monday were very good candidates, but when it came out kind of in the wash was Smartsheets. So why I looked at Smartsheets and why I chose that was Smartsheets pretty much, their user experience is a spreadsheet. So if you've used Excel, if you have used Google Sheets, you can use Smartsheets. So that really will help with adoption and use. Additionally, one of their main views, one of their default views was a Gantt chart, which pretty much does what we really wanted from the software, that shows progress on our major projects and goals and shows that across multiple years. The charts are quick and, yes? Uh-oh. Huh. Yeah, let me. Sure,
Yeah, I'm looking, yeah.
sure. How about, does that work? Can they hear us now?
Robin, can you hear us? Something's on mute. Or someone is on mute.
Kate, who's on the bottom?
Is that Jerry?
If
Yeah,
it's
that's
on
Jerry.
mute, then
Recording in progress.
no, that would be,
Who's doing the recording?
that's,
Pressing that.
I think that's coming from Rick. No, it shouldn't be. It's probably Rick, and Rick needs to unmute. Yeah, I can go grab. Okay. It kicked you out?
Robin, can you hear me?
No, it doesn't look like it. Texting.
Okay. Then- Okay. So,
Spoke too soon about no glitches. I cursed the meeting. I apologize.
so Jerry is in the bottom,
Yeah, Jerry. bottom
Carol,
left.
and then our presentation.
Here we go.
The sound came back now.
Double duty. All right, so I think I know, but I'll have to check with my. I'm going to hold off on presenting. So apologize for that. So where I was, so I came to Smartsheets because of the user experience, the interface. I think I went over that. It's same as any spreadsheet. Its default, one of its default views is a Gantt chart, which really meets our goals and needs, especially for showing goals and projects across multiple years, and also across multiple departments. The ability to embed the charts on the web page and in presentations, the integration with existing Google Workspace Business Suite as well, and collaboration and roll-up. So really met the needs for the goal-setting software. And in addition, there are some other features that really, I think, put it over the edge and are nice to have and kind of a bonus for us. So one of those features is really a dynamic dashboard that you can have charts, graphs, links, and images. So in your package, you can see I created a well monitoring dashboard. So this has every time Carl goes out and measures the wells, it updates and then pushes it to the dashboard. Also, you can have multiple data sources and departments can roll up onto one dashboard. And there is a no-code application that allows people, such as Carl in the field, to gather the data, and it actually goes directly into Smartsheets and then up to the dashboard. So as I looked at the 5, like I said, Smartsheets really seem to be the one that meets our needs. Very easy to use. I think we can have great adoption with it, and it meets the needs of showing projects and goals across departments and across years as well.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, David. Robin, comments?
I am a big Smartsheets fan. I actually use it. Mr. Springett's wife is a whiz at Smartsheets. It's a really easy tool. It's on the web. Numerous people, if you have the right kinds of licenses, can update it. You can attach documents. As Dave mentioned, you have different views that you can show information in. You can create Gantt charts, dashboards. It's a great tool.
So I will emphasize the point that Mr. Springett's wife is the expert with Smartsheet. Mr. Springett, on the other hand, not so much. But it is a fantastic. I mean, from what I see, what my wife has told me, it's a fantastic tool. Has a lot of applications, and hopefully we can take maximum advantage of it. Thanks, Dave.
Robin, does Cindy use it to track Bob's tasks and goals and to-do lists? Is that how you know she's really, really good at it?
No, I know she's really good at it because I introduced her to it and then she got a lot better at it than me.
So I move to authorize the town administrator to execute documents related to the statements of work provided by Smart Sheets, Inc. Ask for a second from Ms. Hunter.
I'll second that.
All in favor, aye. John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
Aye, Bob Springett.
David, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Item 6 is a discussion on remaining a one precinct in the town of Dover. Our presenter for this process this evening is none other than our town clerk, Ms. Felicia Hoffman. Hello, Felicia. How are you?
Hello. Very well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you very much for being here this evening.
So we talked a lot through the past year and a half about the fact that Dover had grown, and we had a lot of voters, and we probably were going to end up being 2 precincts. And there was a lot of background work done. How do we split the town? How do we make it equitable? How do we keep things fair? But I'm very happy to report that our numbers came in lower than I anticipated, so the state will allow us to remain 1 precinct if we so choose for the next 10 years. I see no reason not to do it. I see no advantage to split into 2, so I'm hoping you all agree and will vote to execute documents for that.
So we
Robin?
dipped under 6,000, according to the census.
They allocate people slightly differently than the boots on the ground clerk does, for which we're very thankful.
Yes.
I like having the 1 precinct, though.
It works well.
Robin, would you like to add anything?
I'm smiling. I think it's great news.
As do I.
So here's my final question. You couldn't have gotten a better slot than 1.6 on tonight's agenda?
I will look at our town administrator for thanks for that.
Wow. The bus.
He asked for it.
Hey, I was trying to give you a little lightweight stuff. You have a lot of heavy stuff to deal with.
Felicia, would you like our signature on this evening? What would you
Yes, so
prefer?
there are some documents here that Kate has, I
do you have to
believe,
make the
that can be
motion?
signed tonight.
Oh, I do. I'm gonna make the motion, and then I'm gonna sign this, and I'm gonna have Bob sign it, and then Robin can sign it in
Wrestle
person.
her.
That's
Wrestle her
terrific,
up.
thank you.
I move to petition the Commonwealth that the town of Dover remain a 1 precinct town, and ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor, aye. John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
Aye, Bob Springett.
So moved. So Felicia, I have signed this, ask Bob for a signature, and
One more.
one more. That way Mona will have one less thing that she'll have to track us down for tomorrow. Is that the original? You need another one?
We're good.
So there are 2 documents that you're going to sign.
Kate will send around the packet at the end of the,
Oh,
at the end
Yeah.
of the meeting with everything.
So I'm
that
going to
needs
let
to
Kate
signature, yeah.
keep the paperwork.
Okay,
Well, we got the motion, we're good.
you're good? Yep.
You're perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, Felicia.
Should have known Kate would be right on top of this and have everything at our disposal. Item
Precinct.
1.7, appoint the planning board associate member, Scott Friedman, as a full member. Chris, anything to add, or can we just?
No, just when elected bodies have a vacancy on their body, they can either choose to wait until the next election to fill that, or the Board of Selectmen can make an appointment to fill the remainder of that individual's term. The planning board is recommending that the board appoint the associate member, Scott Friedman. as
So
a
it should be the 2022 town election?
That is correct.
Correct. So the summary is, due to the resignation of Carol Cherico, the planning board has available a vacant seat as a full-time member. Land Use Director Courtney Starling is recommending that the Selectmen appoint Associate Member Scott Friedman to the planning board as a full member until the, Mr. Springett, 2022 town election.
That's the old editor, John.
God, never the grumpy editor, just when it's pointed at me. I move to appoint Planning Board Associate Member Scott Friedman, and to thank Scott for his willingness to do this, as a full member to the Planning Board until the 2022 town election, and ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor, aye. John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
So moved. Scott, thank you very, very much for your service. Discussion of the water request for qualifications in the RFQ.
Thanks, John. So this past town meeting, the town appropriated $100,000 for us to engage a water consulting or consultant/engineering firm to help the town and the board assess its existing water service delivery infrastructure and make both short and long-term recommendations to ensure that the town has a reliable source of water. And to get that process started, we have drafted a request for qualifications, which is a solicitation for firms to respond back with essentially a scope of work or a proposal on how they would accomplish this work for the town. While we're not obligated to undertake a traditional procurement process, I thought it was in the town's best interest to do so this time. And so we've structured this request for qualifications twofold. One is, again, inviting interested parties to submit a proposed scope of work, a scope of engagement, and then secondarily, to then invite them in for interviews with a panel that will be made up of a few community members and staff, and then taking both of those things into consideration, the interview and the firm's proposal. That committee will then vote on who they think is the best fit for the community. So I wanted to just share with the board the RFQ that we've drafted so that you had an opportunity to review it and discuss it. Robin, as the board's water liaison, has worked with me on this. She's seen this. It's been solicited to some others in the community for their feedback. And unless there are any additional comments from the board this evening, we consider this ready to hit the street.
Robin, seeing where this is something that you have been the liaison to, I'll ask you if you have anything from your perspective that you'd like to add.
I don't. Jerry's raising his hand. Chris and I reviewed it, and then we got input from Ron Myrick. He reviewed it for us and provided us with some comments. He also offered to, sit on the panel to interview these candidates.
Thank you. Bob?
No, I think it's a big piece of work. I was a little pleasantly surprised to see you guys think you can hit the 2023 town meeting.
We don't know, but we're going to try.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think obviously you lay this stuff out and you give it your best shot. But that was a pleasant surprise because it is, we'll put an asterisk on that one. And we'll see how this thing goes because it's a complex question. Yep.
Thank you. Our chairman of the Board of Health, Jerry Clark, has his hand raised in the gallery.
I'm a little bit curious. In looking at page 3, where it discusses meetings, there seems to be an omission because earlier in the document, it clearly recognizes that the Board of Selectmen have legal responsibility only over what is known as the Dover Water Department, which is the some 78 homes and/or businesses connected to the infrastructure that pre-existed, and that the public water supply entities, of course, are responsible only to the state, but that the Board of Health is the predominant entity with responsibility and regulation over some 70% of the community. And there's no discussion whatsoever in this whole document about interacting with the Board of Health. And that furthermore, it seems strange that some of the matters to be reviewed already have been reviewed. So I'm just curious at the way this document came to be, because when it showed up in the agenda 2 days ago, it was the first time I was even aware of this
Barry, I
document.
sent this document to you a few weeks ago to ask you for comments.
Well, you would not believe the queue that
Maybe I
exists
sent
in my
it to your
3
boss.
government email mailboxes between
Yeah, I will go
EPA.
back and look through and,
It could be, ma'am, but all I can tell you is I spend 10 to 12 hours a day, as I did today, as I did yesterday, just trying to keep up with matters. So unless someone really knocks on the door or makes a point of saying, did you read this email? There are some things I admit I will not get a chance to see.
I'm going to let Chris respond.
But that doesn't address the questions that I've raised.
So the question that Jerry's raised here about the inclusion of the Board of Health, the meeting's communication, the expectations and objectives is a general overview, right, of what the town is looking for, right? It's not a definitive contract. It's not all-inclusive or extensive. It's not meant to list out every single thing that, or every single person that this entity would engage with or work with. They will certainly be in touch and work with the Board of Health as it relates to the Board of Health's purview over water matters. So, I'm certainly confident that the firm that will ultimately be selected.
If I would point out, under objectives on the same page, there's a curious omission, Chris, that if you were looking for a regional partnership and/or a major municipal supply, because of the act of the legislature of 1986, to which Dover is a beneficiary and subsequently a signatory to agreements, that would be from the Elm Bank.
but Jerry, we're just trying to get a master, to put everything that all of us or some of us have, put it into one document and have a master plan.
I'm not disagreeing. I would just hope it would be correct.
So, Jerry, thank you for your comments, and I agree with Robin, and I agree with Chris that the scope and the purpose of the presentation this evening is to have a general understanding from our perspective of exactly the items that we will be looking into. I don't think I think the legal technical term for what you're saying is you're arguing facts that are not in dispute at this level. So I'm going to move on, or I don't think there's anything that we can discuss further. Chris, anything to add?
No, unless the board had any other comments. If not, we'll move forward with getting this issue.
No, I'm good.
Great.
Thank you. Robin, thank you. Jerry, thank you for your comments. Item 1.8, discussion of, I'm sorry, on 1.9, discussion regarding temporary water technical assistance.
Thanks, John.
Chris?
So as we talk about long-term water efforts and longer-term consulting and engineering engagements, We are still operating here in town with a public water supplier overseen by a private company that is still delivering discolored water throughout their system. And the board has been quite active and proactive in engaging our state partners, our legislative delegation, the utility companies, and doing everything that can be done to help resolve this issue. Your work has resulted in a corrective action plan that was issued to Colonial Water by the DEP for them to evaluate their system and implement recommendations as it relates to the
Is that in process?
cause. It is in process, yep. But as we've gone through this, one of the things that we've had conversations about is the benefit that a temporary, short-term engagement with a water consultant could provide to the town as we are having conversations with the DEP, with the DPU, with Colonial Water Company to make sure that essentially everything that possibly can be done is being done. And so my thought here, and what I wanted to propose to the board, is to consider engaging a short-term, very short-term consultant to help work with us as our third-party independent individual to assess all the work that is being done by Colonial Water Company, their third-party consultant, as well as the work being done by the DEP and the DPU. Almost I envision this individual or entity as an advisor to us who might be able to help us look for areas that perhaps haven't been looked at by others, if they exist. Maybe they don't. But that's what I wanted to raise to the board for your consideration this evening. I have had informal conversations with some firms that the town has worked with in the past, and an engagement like this is estimated to be about a maximum of 100 hours at a rate of around $200 per hour.
So, Chris, and my view is that we have been dealing with water issues for a long time, and I'm asked about our water issues on a weekly basis. I'm asked about follow-up with Denise's office, with Senator Rush's office, with the DEP. I just am, on a weekly basis, people ask me, and I'll let Bob and Robin speak to this personally, where we are as the executives of the town. I view this as a industry expert or as a subject matter expert that, as we saw and heard reports earlier this evening, when Carl Valenti was our interim administrator, one of the things that he brought to us was industry with expertise within a very specific defined vertical. He brought us a number of different things that we were, as a town, unaware of. Industry experts in my tenure in serving on boards have always served us very well, can serve you very well. Not obviously always serving you very well, but can serve you very well. And I like the idea of limiting the engagement to $20,000 or something along those lines is usually money very well spent, especially when our constituent and us as the executives have limited bandwidth to be able to follow up on the things that our Colonial Water liaisons are providing or should be providing to us in a timely manner. So I think this is very similar to what we heard from earlier this evening when we were able to utilize resources that Carl Valenti has brought to us. Robin?
No, I agree.
Bob?
I think that what I hear from residents is resolution. What they're most interested in is solving the problem. And I don't see how this advances that particular agenda. Because as we've gone through the E. coli situation, and as we've gone through discolored water situation, the power to be in the sense of overseeing a public water utility is the DEP. I'm sort of reluctant, from a political perspective, to sort of question. I mean, I've done everything that according to them, are legally possible to do. Quite frankly, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, I think the only way to get to resolution is to take that $20,000, hire a litigator, and file suit against Colonial Water, and telling them that, unless and until they can actually improve their service quality to the town of Dover, we're going to move to enjoin them from adding any clients until they can get the situation controlled. So I think it's a good idea. I think in a normal circumstance, hiring an expertise to advise is the right thing to do. I just don't see it adding value in this particular case, because the issue is solving the problem, and the right people with the right authority and the right power have been engaged in doing that since June. So for the people, the residents who are dissatisfied, and I'm one of them, because I get my water from Colonial Water, and it is various shades of gray and black and yellow. I think that you got to be much more aggressive with the company. They've simply, either they don't have the resources, they may have the intent, but it's really time to sort of bring them to the table, and I don't see this as moving in that direction.
So, keep in mind, Bob, that they're in the process of going through a merger. And I believe, if I recall, that is supposed to be done by November. And I'm going from memory, so I could be wrong, because I went to look at the Aquarian website. For me, just hiring our own person is just to make sure that everything that can be done is being done, just another set of eyes, just to show that, we are trying to make sure that both the regulators and Colonial are doing everything they possibly can. Chris, I know, reached out to the DPU as well to talk about what they may be able to do. Denise has been really active in trying to help the residents of Dover with this. I wanted to ask the question if the flushing helped anybody. I don't have brown water because I have a whole house filtration system. Even though I'm served by Colonial, my filters are brown.
Yeah, again, Robin, from my perspective, if I was sitting in the DEP or I was in the DPU, I would not see this in favorable light.
When you say this, Bob, what do you mean? When you say
Hiring a consultant to sort of go over the work that they have gone through, it's like having an audit of their work.
Well, it's another set of eyes to see if somebody else sees something that we can go to them and say, do you think this might work? Did you think about it?
I agree. I see it along the same lines as Robin. I think that I think what we're all hearing and all experiencing from our neighbors, all three of us are Colonial Water customers, and we, the executives, represent the town, which is also a Colonial Water customer.
Yep.
So we have individual. We come to it with individual bias. We come to it with we come to this with a set of facts that we may or may not be frustrated about. And as you've articulated, Bob, you want to take action that may result in legal or begin the process of legal action. That may be something we decide to do both individually, collectively, and together as a town. So all of those are options. I like the idea of, we then, if we do that, we also have to justify and rationalize to the town spending the town dollars to go down that process.
That's not what
as
I'm
well.
suggesting. I'm suggesting residents who are customers do that, not the town. We
Not the
could try.
town. Okay, so because,
Or we could do it on their behalf, but it's not, I
Yeah,
don't
but
see it as a town.
the town has a responsibility to the center of town. This is, you know, the town is a customer as well.
Yeah, I agree.
And
I
as
agree.
a customer, you know, we have employees in the townhouse, and so we're trying to address some of the issues that we're seeing in our municipal buildings.
Yes, but there are proposals for additional usage of the system. And if the current system isn't providing clear water, according to the EPA, it's safe water. I just think that all residents would be better off if we stopped that growth until they proved that the water is not just safe, but also clean. And again, we can, you know, if we don't agree,
Oh,
that's,
the DEP said the water was safe and clean, it's just discolored.
yes, safe, they say. Clearly not clean, because I have experienced not clean in the last 2 weeks. So if we can disagree, I just don't see how spending money on another consultant to review the work of professionals who are charged with the responsibility of doing this work is an added.
Well, as I said, I'm looking at it as just somebody else giving us potential suggestions of how this issue may be rectified.
would you like to?
Yeah, if I may, I didn't envision it necessarily or primarily as, you know, solely reviewing what the DEP puts forward or what Colonial Waters company's third-party consultant puts forward. You know, I viewed it, you know, as a resource to help us, right? So we talked about, you know, filtration systems, or Robin mentioned her filtration system today. You know, perhaps there is an opportunity or opportunities out there where maybe that is the best path forward, right? But we don't have those technical resources, right, at our disposal to help us work through some of these other potential solutions that maybe others have not thought about. Maybe they will, right, when they come out of Colonial Waters' third-party engagement. I don't know, but the thought is that it might be beneficial for us as a community to have, on a very limited basis and small dollar, technical resource available to help us work through or answer any questions that we may have as it relates to strictly the discoloration issue at hand. Alternatively, we could wait, right? We could wait until we go through the RFQ process for a longer-term consultant, right? And also have them also, you know, assist us in a technical capacity. If this thing is still ongoing, it's just, you know, we are 3 to 4 months in now on this.
It was June, right?
It's been a long time.
The other part is, we might not have a long-term consultant on board until December,
I think, you know, at the earliest.
at the earliest.
That's what we're targeting.
So we're targeting December, and your neighbors, me, you, we, think about Robin, we've been dealing with this as customers for months, and our constituents are constantly voicing displeasure, right? So
So John, I come back. The issue is solving the problem. I
Yeah.
don't see how this step moves us to solve the problem.
Because
Colonial responds only to the DEP.
And Colonial has given us many reasons why, even from a flushing standpoint, that they can't do the things that are
Right, but we can't, there's no way we can force them to do that. It's only the DEP.
I think what this will do is help us move the timeline along.
Yeah, I don't see that. So we can just
It
disagree.
could or it couldn't, right? You know, we could engage us and it could come back and everything that's being done is what it is. And unfortunately, this is a longer-term solution. I mean, that could come back. That is certainly a possibility. But, that's the question that I wanted to pose to the board is, given our current circumstances, did the board think that this was
We have 2 yeses and a no.
of interest? So,
Yeah, we have two yeses and a no. Do you need a motion for us to?
it's entirely up to the board. If a board member wants to make a motion to authorize me to move forward to engage a short-term consultant for this at a potential cap if you want. Alternatively, if there's no motion, then that speaks for itself on
I'd like
how
to
you
know
want to
the price.
pursue.
20,000.
Approximately. But I would like, approximately. What if it came back as, if it couldn't be done for 20,000?
This is different, right? This is a different consultant to come in 100 hours at $200 an hour, it's $20,000. This is not this is separate from,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. This is approximately,
Right.
right? Approximately. Robin, do you have any other questions, concerns, comments?
John, I think, I believe you and I are on the same page. I just think another set of eyes, somebody else looking at the situation may shed some light and maybe not. And if they can't, it's only gonna be 4 or 5 hours of work.
Yeah, I just reiterate, Bob, when we are looking at possible litigation or a possible legal approach, whether it's individually as taxpayers, or as ratepayers to Colonial. As customers to Colonial, or as the executive of the town, I want to be sure, I would like to be sure that there is something we've missed, and that there isn't a process that we may have benefited from, because litigation is expensive. Whether we take it on an individual basis or we take it as the town, or we do it together, it's going to be expensive. So I am going to make a motion that we allow Mr. Dwelly to enter into conversations with consulting firms for the purpose of a short-term water consultant for an amount no more than $20,000, and ask for
Second
a
that.
seconded. Robin,
I second that.
second. All in favor? Aye, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
No, Bob Springer.
So thank you very much. And Chris, we're going to move to item number 10. Calendar events. So the calendar events lists key events and working dates used by town departments and boards and committees in the planning process. I'm not going to ask Dave to share the screen in the event that there is a malfunction and that we get eliminated. I would suggest that anybody watching this evening or watching us on our Facebook recording go to the town website, Kate, where this is live right now. Okay.
Yep, we're on Facebook Live, we're on DC, DSC TV Live, all the channels, yep.
So
We're out there.
we're out there, and this is out there. The
This is
posting
out
of
there,
this
the packet is out there,
The
yep,
packet's
and
out
available
there.
on the website, yep.
I move to approve the calendar events for October 2021 through June 2022, and ask for a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springer.
So moved. Thank you very much. Item 11, provide updates on any of the ongoing projects for the Board of Selectmen. There are agendas, Chris, anything that we would like, are we adding, obviously in the packet, but is there anything that we need to announce other than what's here and what's in the packet, and the same rules apply as we just mentioned.
Yeah, that's
for-
it. The only other thing is just a reminder that one of these October meetings will slot in that follow-up discussion on the borrowing conversation related to the community center.
Most likely the October 21st?
Most likely.
Most likely, okay.
Right, and that makes sense based upon the timeline that Bob provided.
Bob, anything to add to this?
No.
Then remind to everyone watching at home that the Dover Board of Selectmen meeting projected agenda items are on the town's website. Potential proposed meetings projected October 7th, 21st, September 4th, and November 18th. No motion needed. Item 12, Town Administrator updates. Chris.
Thanks, John. Two very quick things. The first is, despite the little hiccup about 30 minutes or so ago, Dave was being modest. I just want to thank him and recognize him for tying all this together. It's an actually incredible amount of effort that goes into making a hybrid meeting work and connecting all these things. You figure you just plug a couple of switches in and it happens, but it is a lot of work. So kudos to Dave for getting it done and making it happen. And Rick, you too, behind the screen filming on our behalf here for Dover Sherburne Cable TV. So those guys did a lot of work to make this happen. So I appreciate their efforts.
Thank you.
Yeah, so they were tricking me being at home, because when you talk, it shows up both on Zoom and on Dover TV, and the screens are flipped.
So you just wanted to be a TV star, is that the deal?
I kept thinking mine wasn't set up right, so it's just was freaking me out at first.
Just a quick project update for the board as it relates to the highway garage solar project. So as you'll recall, this past May, we got approval from town meeting to enter into a pilot agreement with a solar company for a solar project at the highway garage. We put that forward in anticipation, based on the board's vote a while back, to move forward with a solar project, a roof array at the highway garage. As you recall, part of that presentation that Select, the solar company, gave to the board was that it would be essentially an all-inclusive project, that they'd come in, they'd get it, they'd be able to get it done, and would be able to see, certainly both the financial and the energy efficient green energy benefits from the project. One thing that came up during the due diligence of the project was that a structural analysis of the roof, which is getting close to being 20 years old now and no longer has a warranty on it. So entering into a 20-year lease to have a solar array on the roof, you want to make sure that your roof underneath is able to sustain that, because if, God forbid, there's a roof leak or the roof caves in again, any downtime on the system is going to cost the town money. So we made the decision that it made sense to essentially reinforce the roof with a rubber membrane that would give you another at least 25 years guaranteed of roof life on there. Problem with procurement arose with that, in that it was explained to us that that roof augmentation would be able to be folded in to the solar project, that the solar provider would be able to fold that in to their overall project, and then just reduce the amount of money that they paid toward that off of our PPA rate. Since that time, the company has a new legal counsel whose opinion on that differs from the company's.
So we're not the only guys who differ occasionally.
So they're presently where we are at is Select, the company, the Power Options, which essentially is like the state entity that oversees this work and authorizes it, is working to essentially determine whether or not Select can in fact just include that roof repair as part of the procurement. If it's not possible, what we will then have to do is, I'll come back to the board and we'll give you an update on the project, on the figures, and then ask you if you would like to move forward making a request at town meeting, because we'd have to make a funding request for the roof repair in order to get that done.
So Chris,
at
when
this
do you
year's
think,
town
when do you
meeting.
think that might happen?
I heard from some folks today that we should be hearing in the next week or so on definitively from the state which path they're able to take related to this. So I'll give you an update then, but I did want to provide you because it's been a couple of months now without an update on that project. So
And we'd have to have we'd have to have a town meeting approval. Is that what you said?
if we needed to go through the procurement and pay for the roof repair
Right.
ourselves, we'd have to request the funds at town meeting. Yep. Any other questions on the solar project? Okay. And then my last update actually is a deferral over to Kate. I think Kate's got a couple of things that she wanted to share with the board.
Thanks, Chris. So I'm happy to announce that our community newsletter collaboration effort has launched. And we're teaming up with some of our very dedicated town volunteers, in particular right now, Ruth Townsend. She'll be creating and collecting all the...
She doesn't have enough to do on the
One more thing on her list of things to do, but we're very happy that she has stepped forward. So she'll be collecting information from boards, committees, departments, the school administration, really any town-related news. So tonight we really want to reach out and ask for boards and committees and departments to send Ruth any information they want in the upcoming November newsletter. The deadline is October 15th, and all this information is on the town website. It's the first news item right when you sign on, and Ruth's email address is there, and also information on ideas of some of the information we're looking for as far as boards and committee highlights, any vacancies, any meetings coming up that you want to advertise. And we're also, one of the goals is to link everything in this electronic newsletter to our website. So if anyone has any questions, they can contact me, but all the information is our first news story on the website.
That's terrific.
And it'll be digital.
Robin wants a, mail-out newsletter. She likes the mail-out newsletter.
I do, but
See? I know
I
that.
actually do, but I also like electronic newsletters.
You can print it out.
Just for Robin. Robin should get a special copy. But she
I
has
can
to come
print
in
it.
and pick it up. That's the only caveat. So
That's the
thing-
only way they'll get me in there to sign stuff.
So Kate, the only thing I would ask Ruth, so it's important to have elements that are of interest to the community, not just of interest to us insiders.
Mm-hmm. Yes, point taken, yeah, and I think she's really on the beat of that,
Yeah,
too.
so she's all over the place. She's a good person to, she's a hard worker, she's really good, and
Really, the
she's
main
connected.
goal is to have a consolidated place.
Yep.
To get all the updated information.
Yep.
Terrific. Thank
You
you.
should have the cutest dog competition.
That's a good idea.
Cutest dog
Yes.
competition.
Yes. I vote for
I'm gonna leave that alone.
somebody who lives on near me.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna move to the consent
Sleeping
agenda.
right there.
There's lots and lots and lots of liquor licenses again. You'll be very, very pleased to know that we have one-day licenses for September 20th, 21st, 22nd, 25th, 26th. The 26th, Robin, is a one-day liquor license for Boston College Law School that Jim Rapetti is inviting you to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's interest in Boston College, for people interested in Boston College Law School at the Connor Center, and you're invited. It's the first one you've
Wow.
ever been invited to. They're
Really,
26.
You haven't, John, and I have.
Boston College invites me to everything else, not the law school. The 30th, October 2nd, 8th, and 10th. Open session meeting and the minutes for August 5th, 19th, and August 26th. Thank you, Mona, very much. And I
I'll
move,
come over to sign them, Mona.
Thank you. Kate's got the packet. We'll sign this evening and leave everything for your signature. I move to approve the consent agenda as presented. Ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
So moved. We are completed for the evening. So, Rick, thank you very, very much back in the green room. Dave, thank you. For all of you watching at home, thank you. I will apologize for sound and we will bring attention to sharing the screen and figure out exactly how to do that. And I will also mention to those that this type of meeting is probably going to be the norm going forward. And also, you should anticipate that the 3 of us, or the 6 of us, or the 7 of us won't be here from time to time. So we're going to utilize the remote option for us to keep things moving as smooth as possible. We're also going to figure out the mask issue. This evening, we elected, for those of us who are vaccinated and social distance in the Great Hall, have not had masks on. We felt that with the mask, there may be an issue of hearing us clearly. So we're going to address that as well, come to some type of an agreement as to how that will work going forward. I hope everyone was able to hear us clearly. And anything else, I'm going to wish everyone a good night and ask for adjourn.
Make a motion.
Now I'm going to make a motion, thank you, to adjourn. Ask for a second, ask for a second. Robin? All in favor, aye, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
Good evening, everyone. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.